Everybody, welcome back to Heart Breathings. Today I'm just going to go ahead and record changing over my Traveler's notebook covers and making new dashboards. It's spring and it's starting to be sunny outside and the weather's starting to change, so I thought it's just time for a change. I keep looking at all of the old dashboards and I just kind of want something different. This doesn't really have to do with writing, but since I was doing it anyway and some people have asked me about my Traveler's notebook, I thought I would go ahead and record this for you today. Okay, so what you're gonna need if you want to cover your notebooks and make dashboards for your Traveler's notebook is you're gonna need paper that you want to cover both the notebooks themselves, if you have notebooks that you'd like to cover, and you're going to need paper for the dashboards themselves. Some scrapbook paper, this is mainly what I use as scrapbook paper, but some scrapbook paper is double-sided, so if you have things on both sides, then you don't really need to have two sets of paper. But most scrapbook paper only has the color on one side. For example, this paper that I have here has the design on one side and it's just plain and white on the other. So what I like to do is cut them so that they're about the same size, and then I glue them together so it looks like it's double-sided. So you're gonna need enough paper for the front and back of your dashboard, and if you have notebooks that you'd like to cover, you're gonna need paper for the notebooks as well. You'll also need a corner rounding tool if you'd like to use a corner rounding tool and round your corners, which I like the look of that better. You could also use scissors to do that if you don't have a tool like that, so you need some scissors of any kind. You'll need a laminator and some laminating sheets. I am just using Amazon's Basics laminator that I got from Amazon, which I will link below, and just some letter pouches. These are the 3 milliliter. I have everything already pre-cut because I happened to find a couple of rolls of paper from my paper studio at Hobby Lobby, and if you see the price on that, these were $1.50 a piece, and they were actually an additional like 20% off clearance. So I got these for just over $1 for an entire roll of paper. So I got both of these patterns, the pink and teal, and then the black floral. So since they're in a roll, they really were rolled up. So I went ahead and cut those to size and sort of tried to flatten them out over the course of several days. Then I also have this scrapbook paper that has a little bit of sparkly shine to it. It isn't glittery where it will come off on your fingers, but it just has a little bit of glitter to it. I already have one of my notebooks from last 90 days when I set it up for the new year that is covered with this type of paper. So I'm gonna leave this one covered and everything else I'm gonna change. All right, so walking through the process. This is an A5 Traveler's notebook. So I want to cover the notebooks that I'm using with a dashboard so that I can put sticky notes or pictures or anything else on it. And I also have kind of a protective cover for my notebook. It also just provides more decoration for the notebook. Now, in order to get a regular size scrapbook sheet, which is 12 by 12, to fit over an A5 notebook and have a little bit of space where it's actually covering it completely, you need to cut it in the middle. So instead of just having a sheet of paper and cutting the tops and bottoms and rounding the corners and then running it through your laminator, you're gonna find that it comes up just a little bit too short. So what I like to do is I create a front and a back for the dashboard, and then I just leave a little bit of space in between so that it properly covers the notebook. I'm going to go ahead and get started on making the change from these Hello Kitty dashboards and these others that I made into these pretty florals. So the first one that I'm going to do this black floral. So I need 4 sheets of paper. I'm doing 4 sheets because I'm going to do front and back of one side, which will be the outside and the inside, and then front and back of the actual back of the sheet, and then I'm going to combine these. So all I'm going to do to start out with is I'm going to take this Tombow mono adhesive, and you can use any kind of adhesive really, and I'm going to attach the front to the back. Okay, so now what I have is I have a front and back for both sides of my dashboard. And as you can see, this is just the letter size laminator, which is probably the standard size. So now you can see why I can't put the entire A5 size thing inside this laminator. See, if you can see, it's too long. So that's why I had to separate it into two different pieces. So I go ahead and put the first side that I want to use into the laminating sheet, and anything that you want to put on the inside of the laminating pouch needs to go ahead and go on before you put it through the heat. So I have a few things from this Chic Paper Lovers book that I thought would be kind of fun to use on these pretty florals. So I just am going to very loosely attach it where I want it to go. This is just one of the postcards there from inside. So I'm going to kind of eyeball where I want that to go centered. And I'm just going to attach it down. I'm not too worried about making it perfect in terms of putting a lot of tape down, because the laminating part is going to hold it in. I do like to put it on there so it doesn't shift when I put it through the laminator. So then all I do is run it through. So there we have the first part of the sheet, and I actually like to run it through twice just because it seems to not heat it up quite as much as I want the first time through, and I want to make sure that that seal is really good. I also am realizing that when I sent that one through, I forgot to round the corners, so I'm not going to round the corners for the back piece, but I will do that on future pieces. Okay, so while that second piece is going through, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut off the excess here on the sides. Now you don't want to get too close to the actual sheet of paper, because if you get really close, you'll break the seal and it will just come undone. Okay, so now I've done the same thing with some of the pink flowers. I just took a few stickers from the Paper Lovers book and put them on here. And you'll see, like, some of this, the edges don't line up entirely great. So what I've tried to do, this is just flaw in my own measuring and everything, because I'm not super precise when it comes to that. So what I try to do is make sure that the side that's going to be more visible is the one that's more lined up. And it's still going to be, because of the way I cut it, a little bit hard to get the edges perfect, but I can get it where you're really not going to notice, because this side that has a little bit more white space showing is really going to be tucked into the center of the planner, so you're not going to see that as well. So I'm going to take the corner rounder and I'm going to round the corners just a little bit. It doesn't take off much, but it just takes off that little tiny bit. And then just like the previous ones, I'm going to run these through the laminator. Oh, I did want to mention real quick before I run these through that when you're doing this sort of size, you end up with a lot of space on this laminating page that isn't getting used. So if you have anything else that you've been meaning to laminate, this is a good time to kind of pop those on, like any die cuts or, you know, little things that you cut out of a magazine that you thought you might want to laminate to keep. This is a good way to use that space. For now, I don't really have anything that I want to do, but it's a good idea so that you're not wasting that piece of the laminating paper. Okay, so now that all my dashboard covers are laminated and the excess pieces are cut off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Tacking Tape and I'm going to use the tape to be this center thing that holds it all together. So if you can see here on this edges, the tape is what is holding it together, not a laminating pouch. I'm just going to take one of these and I'm going to show you real quick how I did this. So I have the front side and then this will be the back side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these out just like this, like pretty close to each other, but just a little bit of space apart. And I'm trying to line up the bottoms of the paper and the tops of the paper as much as possible to get them even. And then I'm just going to pull out the tape and I'm going to set it down right here on the side. All right, so once the first set of tape is on, I'm going to turn it around and then I'm going to put a second piece of tape here to really hold that booklet together. So I just settle that tape in really good and cut off the excess here at the top and at the bottom. And now I have my dashboard. You can do what you can to sort of smooth out the tape so that you can't really see that it's there, which will happen on its own over time as well as it gets used. But that creates your dashboard. And like I said, don't worry about these little pieces. At least I don't worry about those little pieces that have just a little bit of excess there, because once you put it over the notebook and you slide it through the traveler's notebook and you have that notebook there, you don't really see that inner part so much. And you could always cover it with washi, or you could just do a better job cutting your pages in the first place. I just am not a super perfectionist when it comes to that sort of thing, so I just don't sweat it, but it's totally up to you. So there's the first of my new dashboards. Okay, so for part 2 of changing out my traveler's notebook to something a little bit different is to actually cover the notebooks. So if you have notebook covers, like you've found notebooks for your traveler's notebook that are beautiful and you love them just as they are, then you could just slide your newly made dashboards over the top of them and they will be great. If, however, you've found notebooks that you don't love the covers on, you can always change them. So for example, these notebooks I'm absolutely in love with because they're Tomo River paper, which is the same as my Hobonichi. I love the way the paper feels. It's just, they're incredible. However, as you can see, when I peel off the cover that I made, they come in these undesirable colors. They're very neutral, but they're dark tones, like dark burgundy or really dark grayish blue. They look very masculine to me, and I just don't like them because that would not go at all with my pretty covers that I've made, and I like things to just be a little more feminine. So I went around the corners and in the center and put some of this Tombow Mono removable adhesive on them, so that even if I wasn't finished with the notebook, which like this one I've only used a few pages of, so I wouldn't want to trash it, I can just pull the cover off and I can replace it. And I can actually hold on to this cover that I made out of scrapbook paper and put it back on the notebook later if I want to change it out. So I will keep that. I've just put it in one of my drawers and I make a new cover. So I am switching over all of my notebooks to this sort of sparkly glitter scrapbook paper. I got this from just a block of scrapbook paper. That's where I get most of mine. Michael's will sometimes have huge blocks of like 100 sheets of scrapbook paper for only, $5 if you can get it on sale. Now what I could do is I could just place the previous cover on top of it and cut it out to match exactly, and I knew that it would fit. But if I was just starting out, like just in case you're just doing your first one, and I apologize for the lighting, you guys, there's not really much I can do. I've just got all this light coming in through this window. Hopefully it'll be okay. So basically what I'll do is I would open up whatever size notebook it is that I'm going to use, and I would do the best I can to make sure that the paper is completely covering up the red that I don't want to see, or whatever color cover I don't want to see, just barely. So I want to make sure it's covering it on all sides. And since this already has adhesive on it, it's a little bit tricky. But once I get it kind of lined up the way that I want it to line up, I will go ahead, flip it back over, and I'm just going to cut off the top excess. Now you'll see I have not cut off this extra side, because if I were to just pull this over, there might not be quite enough space. It actually looks like it would be fine. But sometimes what you want to do is you want to close the notebook first, make sure that you have enough space, because sometimes it would be a little bit too tight and you need to kind of open it up just a little bit and then reposition the paper on top. But once you feel like you have a really good fit, then you can go back around and cut off any of the excess paper. Just trim that off. Okay, so then now I have a perfectly nice, and it looks like it was made for it, notebook cover. That's going to look really nice inside my Traveler's notebook. So now I'm going to put all these pieces together and show you what my new Traveler's notebook looks like. So real quick, I forgot to mention that I am covering my Hobonichi as well, and I'm just going to use that same black paper that I used before. I've already got it measured out. All I did was just measure it according to the shape of the book, and I'm just going to cover that real quick. So since this flap that I'm putting inside the secretarial pocket tends to get banged up a little bit more, I like to reinforce it with some washi tape that coordinates with the color of the cover. Okay, so now I've got the Hobonichi covered, and I'm going to put together my new spring look for my Traveler's notebook. Alright guys, so there you have it. This is how I have transformed my same Hobonichi and Traveler's notebook into sort of a brand new look and feel, even though all of the things inside it are exactly the same. And if you're interested in how I put some of these other little embellishments on, I know I didn't walk you through that, but these are just like sticky notes that I just took like a handful of them, and then put some of that adhesive on the back and stuck them right on. And then I've got some little envelopes and obviously like some pictures of my husband and I just stuck those on with that removable adhesive so they're easy to take off and it doesn't do any damage to them. But this is how you can turn your current Hobonichi or your current notebooks and Traveler's notebook into something fresh for spring. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll subscribe to my channel. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.